Let's bring in MS Now senior national security reporter David Rohde and retired Army Lieutenant General Mark Hertling. He is now an MS Now military analyst. General, what do you make of the president's comments just there?
We're going to see a lot of things in readouts, Ariel, that may actually state what happened or the president's view of what he wants people to know. I think this is one of them. I would suggest that China would likely be extremely reluctant to give any kind of military equipment, any kind of support other than perhaps even mentioning things to their Iranian friends. So I think the president is soft-siding this a bit and was disappointed that China would not provide more support, either with equipment or assets or influence to the Iranians.
So, David, I want to dive into an issue that's happening as we speak, which it kind of fits into the broader puzzle here. Israel and the Lebanese officials are meeting in Washington this moment. What are the key issues that they're going to have to hash out? And is there optimism about a potential, resolution here?
It all comes down to the disarming of Hezbollah. That's been the issue in Lebanon for years. Some Lebanese want to see that. The government's so weak that they've not been able to do that. Israel obviously wants that. And until that happens, I think it'll be difficult for there to be a peace accord. This process has gone well. It's been Secretary of State Rubio's team that's done it. I've heard from outside observers that it's a very organized, positive process, and I just want to credit the administration where it's due. But a big breakthrough is unlikely to happen. They're still meeting in Washington. We really won't get an update till later today. And lastly, this is a really important issue in the region. Mm-hmm. A lot of people in the region see the number of civilians who've died in Beirut in these bombings. They use it against Israel. And the Iranians have said they want to see this as part of an agreement, that the West and the world is much more interested in the Strait of Hormuz opening. But there's a desire for a long-term settlement somehow, or at least a more durable ceasefire in Lebanon. But it's going to take time. And again, Hezbollah is the spoiler. Yeah,
for sure. And if there were to be some kind of agreement between Israel and the Lebanese, that would certainly undermine Iran in the region. General, Israel and Hezbollah both have launched strikes at each other today. How likely is the Lebanese government to take on the responsibility of disarming Hezbollah, which is at the crux of these discussions? And the group so far is intransigent.
Yeah, and I'll reinforce everything David just said. It is a critical element of the entire peace treaty because you're talking about the Iranian support for Hezbollah, Hamas, the Houthis, and other proxy groups throughout the regions. So Lebanon, as David said, wants this to happen, but it's going to be critically challenging because Hezbollah is a large organization and they are literally in every facet of Lebanese society. They are a political party as well as a militia group. So it's going to be extremely difficult, but it is critical to the peace process. And it's also critical to what Israel wants. And if we don't see advancements in Lebanon, we're likely going to still be stalled in other areas of the Middle East.
So, General, to dovetail on that, how are Iran's proxies like Hezbollah and Hamas viewing what's happening in Iran right now, the stalemate that's ongoing? They've been relatively decimated, if that's a thing, militarily. But is this just strengthening their resolve, the sort of maximalist positions that those terrorist organizations hold?
Yeah, I think all of the proxy groups throughout the region have been degraded for sure. I'm not sure they're not capable of continued attacks, but they have had leadership issues. They have been basically told by the governments where they are, both Iraq, Lebanon, some of the other places, to stand down. And that's my expression, not theirs, but they're waiting to see what's going to happen in Iran. Iran seems to have, from the institutional standpoint of the IRGC and the Ayatollahs, seems to have the upper hand right now in terms of controlling negotiations. There's a huge distance, a huge delta between what the Iranians want in terms of contributing to a cessation of hostilities versus what the U.S. wants. The president said that earlier this week when he said he just didn't like what the Iranians replied to his message or his approach. So we're going to see continued effort by Iran to expand this conflict, extend it into more times. They're trading basically space for time in this situation to get more capabilities and to have more influence over the United States. And the president, frankly, isn't getting a lot of help. he's going to have very few options, one of which is to go on the offensive again with more bombings, with perhaps even ground forces going in the area. I don't know if that's going to happen. There's a lot of people suggesting that is certainly a course of action. But if that does occur, it's only going to exacerbate some of the other problems that the president is experiencing: a lack of support for from Congress and the American people, a depleting of a U.S. precision weapon system, continued economic frailty across the region and with the allies. So it's going to be continually problematic, and I think Iran realizes that, and that's why they're continuing to push.
And David, there's also the concern from the intel community. You've got new reporting, I understand, that Chinese companies are mulling the possibility of sending military equipment, weapons to Iran. In previous segments, we had talked to experts who say it's highly unlikely that the Chinese government isn't in some way aware of this or maybe sanctioning this. We haven't gotten that confirmed, but what more are we learning on this front?
It's concerning. So about a month ago, CNN actually first reported that this was a possibility. What's amazing is that you have the two presidents, meeting right now. And, U.S. officials warned me that this is still a possibility. So it's private companies trying to send shoulder-fired anti-aircraft missiles. Those would be very effective against American planes, obviously, can kill American pilots, through third countries, possibly one in Africa. And so I think U.S. intelligence agencies are trying to track this and see if it's actually coming forward. But the fact that, this is, I'm being honest, that they're telling me about this, I think that American officials wanted to get this out as sort of a shot across the bow to the Chinese government.
And you heard the president there at the top addressing it and saying that China's agreed to not send any kind of support to Iran. We will see if that rings true. David Rohde, Mark Hertling, thank you both.